Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
How many members do you have now? What's how does it survive? I'm assuming being a nonprofit, you guys
It
just
survives by me begging for money. That's how it survives.
well,
We're completely hello, sweetheart. We're completely funded by charity dollars.
okay.
And raising money is not an easy thing.
No.
I don't like asking for money, but I have to. It's part of, if we're going to keep the doors open, and by the way, I don't take a salary. I live on my pension.
Hmm.
I have one salaried employee who is our executive director, who is a retired sheriff, doing an amazing job, and he's the only person that actually gets paid because it's a full-time job, and we're doing full-time work. Everybody else on my team's a volunteer, which is amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
we have guys that I mean, it can be very time consuming to be a peer counselor. It's morally uplifting to know that you're helping, to know that you can actually play a role that can save a life, save a career, save a marriage. And so we're very proactive in looking for people that need our help. One of the questions, or not one of the questions, one of the issues is even getting the word out there that we exist, because law enforcement is so disjointed.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one particular area that gets the attention of all the cops. So that's a constant battle, is letting people know we exist.
Yeah.
I've had police officers walk up to us at National Police Week, where we have a display set up at Tent City, and say, "Who are you guys?" And once we tell them, I've actually had them start crying right there. We've gotten people into treatment at these conferences where they finally know we exist.
Yeah. No, that doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on, is because, we talk about law enforcement, we talk about, all these kind of, great stories of chasing down bad guys and stuff like that. But just like I said, just like the military, it's people don't realize that most of law enforcement and most of military isn't going through these huge mud puddles in a tank and all these exciting things jumping out of the airplane.
Right.
99% of your time is spent preparing for those moments, and all of the training and all of the sitting in a car observing a closed door, being on patrol, all that kind of stuff that you guys do. That's the 99% that you're spending, and there's a lot of time to think. There's a lot of time to contemplate what you're doing, your career choices, your life choices, and after sacrificing and doing everything that you guys do, then to have that feeling of abandonment, if that's what happens, at the end of your career. Being able to go to an organization like you guys is just absolutely incredible. And so I applaud you. And I'm excited that I have a small, moment here to help everybody, help get the word out. So definitely, for those that are listening, if you have a chance, go to thewoundedblue.org right now and donate. Because I know there's more people out there that you can help, Randy, and
Absolutely.
I love some of the stories that you've been telling. So we will definitely post that in the show notes. The link to your organization. And,
Great.
Yeah.
And if there's an officer out there or retired a cop, because retired cops, they bring all that baggage with them, believe me. That the trauma doesn't end when you turn in your badge. So we are literally a resource for every cop in America, retired cop, and we also do spousal support too. So we're very responsive, and if somebody's in trouble, in jeopardy, you can contact our phone number. We have somebody manning it 24/7. And if you want to reach me personally, I'm Randy at thewoundedblue.org. Reach out to me. I'll get you hooked up with somebody. If you want to be a sponsor of the Wounded Blue, if you're a company and you want to be a sponsor, contact me personally, Randy at thewoundedblue.org.
Yeah, absolutely. I dare say, Randy, the day that I had the most stress as far as the military goes was the day I turned in my retirement paperwork.
Yeah.
So I'll bet the day that you actually put that badge and your gun, your service weapon down on your captain's desk, that has to be just such a feeling. It's almost like you're putting away and you're giving away part of your identity. And I can't imagine, I can imagine, but
Yeah.
I've
Well,
never.
think of this. I didn't plan to retire.
Yeah.
And it was taken from me, right? It was my career was taken from me by the stroke.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something that I had any say over. And that was part of it. If I could have controlled that time and I could have chosen the moment when it's time for me to leave, that would have been one thing, but it was just literally ripped out from under me. And it was, okay, Randy, you're done.
Yeah. Well, now you got to figure out.
What
Like
do
you
I
said,
want to be when I grow up?
Yeah. Got to reassess what God has in store for you. So,
well, think of it this way. I look at it very objectively, that if it had not been for the stroke, which I thought was the worst thing that could ever happen to me, my trajectory in life would never have created the Wounded Blue. So I think that, I live by a certain philosophy, and that is that you can't create your destiny, but you can control your legacy. And that legacy is what I have chosen. And the destiny part was handed to me when I had that stroke.
yeah. Well, I 100% believe that your ability to be remembered in this life is going to be based on the number of people that you serve, the number of people that you help. It's not going to be based on where you live and what you drive and all that kind of stuff, because that's just going to go away. It's like within days of your funeral, all that stuff is somebody else is going to own it. And but the people that you serve, the people that you love, the people that you help in the life, that's how your legacy is going to keep going. So there were some posts, especially on LinkedIn, that you had made.
Are you talking about the ones where I start them off with America needs to know?
Yeah. Where are those?
So yeah, I post they're basically announcements of police officers who've been murdered in the line of duty. And I start them off with America needs to know, because America does need to know about the service and sacrifice of these men and women who are being murdered in the line of duty. Literally, almost daily, a police officer is shot, which is mind-boggling. Almost every single day, a cop is shot. Yeah. And we had 2 days in which 4 officers were murdered in 2 days. So America needs to know. And so I do those little videos, and I put them out on my social media and the Wounded Blue social media. So, I urge, if you guys are on Facebook, go to the Wounded Blue page on Facebook and like it and follow us. My personal, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on what's that other stuff called? I'm not a big social media guy, but I post some stuff on Facebook and Instagram. But I urge you to follow us on the Facebook page, so you see what the Wounded Blue is up to, what we're doing, announcements, and also I have a podcast called A Cop's Life, and I'm very proud of that podcast. It's named after my best-selling book called A Cop's Life,
Okay.
and it's amazing interviews with people who have been through it, and from all kinds of different walks of life, but law enforcement related, and it's very inspirational stuff. And and then my new book is coming out, so we'll be announcing that soon too. That'll be on the website.
Nice. All right.
And that's Rescuing 911, the fight for America's safety.
Well, I consider me the first one that's going to order one of those. I want to read it.
And I want you to review it too. Put it on Amazon. Got to do it.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go over some of these. Jason Roscoe from North Las Vegas PD on February 4th. What can you tell us about him?
Terrible. Responded to a disturbance call, a guy throwing rocks at cars. And when he got there, the subject was armed. He basically walked into an ambush. And while and they got in a gunfight, he was caught out in the open. He was hit, went down, and even though he returned fire and hit the suspect, a second officer, a backup officer, is the one who killed him. But he was mortally wounded. And despite those mortal wounds, he managed to fight back. And the suspect walked up to him when he was down and killed him and executed him. 2 children. I was actually I do a lot of media newscasting on law enforcement topics, and I covered his funeral for 3.5 hours. And it's just one of my jobs with Metro. I was assistant commander of the Honor Guard, so I buried a lot of friends, and for me it's a very personal. Even though I didn't know the officer,
Yeah,
he's still part of my family.
oh,
And so
absolutely.
it was very difficult to cover his funeral, only because I've been involved in so many, and actually that funerals are one of my major triggers for my post-traumatic stress, and it's very difficult to get through that. So when I see these officers getting killed, and I feel it's my duty to bring it to the attention of the American people, and America needs to know.
Well, they do. And I think, especially now, it's incredible how much more common, these officer shootings are nowadays compared to what they used to be. And I think this stems back to what we were originally talking about. The war on cops is real. And there is a certain segment of society that, well, there's 2 problems with this. There's a segment of society that I believe legitimately want to end all law enforcement. There's, and it ranges everywhere from politicians that talk about defunding the police all the way to the people that, like this guy that actually pulled the trigger. It's difficult for, I think, 99% of society to understand the brutal mentality that it takes to walk up to another human being and just point a gun at him and pull the trigger. And, it doesn't matter what person that is, but then to do it to a cop, a person that is hired and assigned to protect the rest of the community. What you're doing is not only killing a person, but you're also trying to destroy a part of society. And the mentality that I like I said, I'm not even sure I can understand it. And maybe most, you tell me, can cops even understand that mentality?
Well, there's been such a dehumanizing effort on the part of media, politicians, um, groups like Black Lives Matter and other leftist radical organizations that have been very effective in in manipulating thought. And then there's this problem with a lack of fear. I actually wrote an article because police agencies, they want to be softer. All the politicians, the chiefs, they're going, we have to be a softer approach. Well, there needs to be fear. You need to be afraid to put your hands on me as a cop.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be afraid of the consequences. And they have destroyed a lot of that fear because of the way that law enforcement is now being trained to avoid, anything that looks bad. So cops are more fearful now to use the proper amount of force at the appropriate times than ever in history. That's getting cops killed. That's getting cops killed and injured.
Yeah.
Because they are afraid to use. There should be a lot more people getting killed by the cops. Now, that's a harsh thing to say, but that's the reality. And when I see, and I view these videos over and over again of police officers who are afraid to use deadly force when even someone may be pointing a gun at them.
Yeah.
And this is the result of the years of anti-law enforcement ideology that has been pushed by the media, by politicians, and by people with the agendas of ending law enforcement as we know it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it started back in even the 80s, 90s, when some of these type people started infiltrating into the Department of Justice, and it's it's hard to fully describe, but it's a concentrated effort, and there's a lot of different organizations and people that are focused on it. But there's
millions of dollars being pumped into the anti-law enforcement because it's actually anti-government. If you drill down, George Soros is one of the most evil human beings on the face of the planet, and he's been exceedingly productive when it comes to what his agenda is, and that's to destroy America as we know it. Yeah. Well, what does he do? He focuses on law enforcement, and that has created much of the environment that we're seeing today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, they're destroying masculinity. They're destroying law enforcement. They're destroying the central family. Those are the targets. And, by destroying the fabric of society, ultimately it's going to destroy, our very ability to have any levels of freedom. And to me,
that's the end goal.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Complete control, and, just bringing in so that just a few at the very top of the government controls everything. That's their goal. And, for any of us that believe in being able to walk down the street and say what we want to say and do what we want to do, and, not have to show our papers every time we come by somebody that thinks we look the wrong way, then if you want to maintain those kind of freedoms, then we absolutely have to support our law enforcement, support our, the family and organizations that promote and support those kind of ideals. And I think the Wounded Blue is right there. And, I think organizations like you are absolutely essential to, you know, to the fabric of our society. So I appreciate doing, what you do. I hope you know that.
I do. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on your program to get it
Yeah.
out there and talk about it, and have your listeners get to know me a little bit and know my organization.
Yeah. Well, one last thing, and just really quick, I asked Betsy this on one of the times that she was on. So let's end this with a little lighter. So you're at Thanksgiving, and somebody wants to hear the funniest story that ever happened to you while you were in law enforcement. One of the most ridiculous things you've ever seen in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What comes to mind?
Well, I would have to say now it's going to be it's human behavior never ceases to amaze me. So it was my first call by myself as a cop in Princeton, New Jersey. I'd gotten out of the academy. We didn't have a formal field training program. They put you with the senior officer who made the determination, okay, this guy's ready to go out on his own. And it was my first night by myself, and it was on graveyard shift. And I responded to a assist the ambulance for a man bleeding call. And it was on the campus of the Princeton University Graduate School. Literally, this is where the rocket scientists are. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I get the call, turn on my red lights and siren, even though there's not another car on the road, because I could, and come to a screeching halt in front of this residence, and it's where the graduate school students lived in different residences. And I pull up, and there's another unit already there with these two old cops. They were old to me. They were probably, 40 years old, but to me, who's 19, they were old hairbag cops. And one of them had a very pronounced Scottish brogue. And as I pull up and I jump out grab my first aid kit, and the first officer is there, and he says, "Laddie, this is your investigation." And I'm going, "Oh, cool." So I run in with my little first aid kit, and I walk into this apartment, and there's no furniture except for a picnic table and a bench. And on the picnic table, there's a pot, like a stew pot, and it's full of ice and blood. And there's a butcher knife on the table, and there's blood everywhere, blood all over the apartment. And I'm looking around, and in the corner is an Asian guy who's just standing there in a black overcoat. So I'm looking around, I'm trying to figure out what the situation is. And I said to the guy, I said, "Excuse me, are you bleeding?" And he goes, "Yeah." I go, "Where?" And he opened up his overcoat, and what was left of his penis was dangling by like a little strip of skin, and blood was pulsing out of it. And he's not showing any pain, any emotion. He's just standing there with bleeding to death. So remembering my first aid skills, I got a compress out and I said, "Here, apply direct pressure." Because I'm not touching that thing. And the ambulance gets there, and they put him on the gurney, and I ride with him in the ambulance because I figure somebody did this to him, and he may die, and I need to get a dying declaration so I can solve this crime. So we're riding in the ambulance, and I said, "So tell me what happened." And he had a very thick Asian accent. I'm not sure I can duplicate it, but he said, "Officer, I have sex problem. Masturbate too much. Interfere with my studies." The guy had failed a math test that day and blamed it on the fact that he was spanking his monkey too much. And instead of maybe moderating his schedule, he put that baby on the table and went whack.
Oh,
And he survived. Not only did he survive, but they sewed it back on. And I saw him for years later. And every time I saw him, I thought about that night. And I said to myself, I'm going to love this career.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to end it at that because I
Did I leave you speechless on that one?
You know what, Randy? I can just think of what some of my listeners, including my mother-in-law, is going to be saying based on that story.
I cleaned it up. I used all the appropriate language.
Oh yeah, you're anatomically correct. That's kudos to you. But yeah, all right. We are going to yeah. All right, Randy. Well, I tell you what. Next time I'm in Vegas, we'll go to your personal there.
My cigar lounge.
Your cigar shop. Your man cave there, and we can swap some other stories that. All right. Yeah. I don't want to say any more because I know I'm just going to get myself in trouble. So,
Okay.
All right, brother. Hey,
That's a
appreciate
deal.
you. And
All right, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. We will talk to you later.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.